Today, we're going to talk about something that's quietly, and I mean really quietly, reshaping not just your mind, but our entire world. We're not talking about a new gadget or some fancy app. We're talking about something much more fundamental, the very architecture of our attention.
All right, let's jump right in with a story. It all starts in a pretty normal high school classroom. You've got a teacher, a bunch of students, and, of all things, a simple wooden box.
So picture this. It's a Tuesday afternoon. There's no big speech, no lecture about how phones are bad. He just walks in, places this box on his desk, and makes a very simple request.
That's it. For just one class period, that digital lifeline they're all so used to, their phones, would be physically gone. And the effect? Wow. It was immediate and, honestly, pretty profound.
And what's so wild about this is the physical reaction. You can almost picture it, can't you? This wasn't just kids being impatient. It was a visible, almost visceral sense of withdrawal. The fidgeting, the nervous energy, their bodies were literally looking for a hit of stimulation that just wasn't there anymore.
But then, something amazing happened. Once that first wave of anxiety kind of washed over them, the whole vibe in the room changed. It got quiet, but it wasn't an awkward, bored quiet. It was a focused quiet. The conversation started to get, well, deeper, way deeper.
And this right here, this quote from a student, it just nails it. It perfectly captures that feeling that so many of us have forgotten, that sensation of your mind just slowing down, operating at a more deliberate, more thoughtful pace. In a good way.
So this simple little classroom experiment brings up some absolutely massive questions, right? What did that wooden box actually give back to those students, even if it was just for 50 minutes? And maybe more importantly, what has the constant presence of these devices taken away from all of us?
Okay, so let's zoom out from that one classroom and take a look at the massive machinery that's running behind the scenes. People call it the attention economy, and it is literally, physically rewiring the circuits in our brains.
You know, way back, over 100 years ago, the psychologist William James absolutely hit the nail on the head. He understood that our attention isn't just a spotlight we point at things. No, it's the actual raw material we use to build our reality. What you pay attention to becomes your life.
So how have modern platforms gotten so good at grabbing that attention? Well, they use what biologists call supernormal stimuli. Think of these as supercharged, exaggerated versions of things our brains are already wired to want, like novelty or social connection. Things like the infinite scroll or a perfectly tailored feed, they aren't just engaging, they're designed to be almost impossible to resist.
And this creates a really dangerous trap, this neurological loop. When we're constantly overstimulated, our brain, trying to protect itself, basically turns down the volume. It becomes less sensitive. And the result? Normal, everyday life. Reading a book, taking a walk, having a real conversation starts to feel kind of flat, boring even. So what do? We reach right back for our phones to get that jolt of high stimulation, and the whole vicious cycle just keeps going.
And this constant cycle, it comes at a huge personal cost. It's not just that we're more distracted, it's something much deeper. It's the slow, quiet erosion of our inner lives.
Just think about it for a second. Think about all those little empty moments in a day. Waiting for coffee, walking somewhere, riding the bus. Not that long ago, those were moments for your mind to just wander, to process things. Now, every single one of those moments is filled, colonized by our devices. And you might think, who cares about a few boring moments? Well, your brain cares a lot. See, that unstructured, bored time is when a critical part of our brain called the default mode network gets to work. This is where we sort through memories, make sense of our lives, and basically build the story of who we are. When we eliminate boredom, we're essentially starving the part of our brain that builds our sense of self.
And look, this isn't just some abstract philosophical idea. The consequences are real, and they are chilling. Look at this timeline. Right around 2012, the exact moment smartphones became mainstream for teens, rates of anxiety, depression, and self-harm just shot through the roof, especially for girls. This isn't just a coincidence, it's a terrifying inflection point in the data.
Now, this rewiring of our attention, it doesn't just stop with us as individuals. It scales up. The very same mechanisms that make us personally distracted are also making us collectively more divided and more angry.
This right here, this is one of the most important things to understand about our world today. Research published in Science found that online, false news, especially news that makes you angry or scared, spreads way faster and way wider than the actual truth. Why? because the algorithms aren't built to find truth. They're built to maximize engagement. And nothing, absolutely nothing, is more engaging than outrage.
And this creates this perfectly toxic feedback loop. Let's break it down. You've got political groups that know that fear and alarm are the best way to get people fired up. Then you have the platforms, whose only goal is engagement, so they amplify that emotional stuff. And then there's us, the public, with our brains already primed for this high-stimulation content, and we just get pulled deeper and deeper into polarization.
So what's the end game here? You get an entire population that is constantly agitated and overstimulated, but at the same time completely under-reflective. And that is a catastrophe for a functioning democracy, which needs us to be able to think clearly and solve complex problems together.
So, where does that leave us? It is so easy to feel helpless, right? Like, this is just the way things are. But here's the thing. This is not some technological destiny we just have to accept. It's all about design choices, and we can start making different ones. And the next big frontier here is, of course, AI. And it's at a crossroads. It could be an unbelievable tool for learning, something that helps us think more deeply. Or, if we just stick with the same old engagement at all costs model, it could just become a super efficient machine for generating personalized outrage on a massive scale. The choice is really up to us. Look, personal strategies like putting your phone in a box, they're a good start. They're necessary. But let's be real, they're not going to be enough. We can't expect individual willpower to win a fight against billion-dollar supercomputers. We need structural change. We have to rethink the basic incentives of our digital world and move from just maximizing engagement to actually prioritizing human well-being.
And that brings us right back to where we started. Back to that classroom and back to that student's simple but incredibly powerful realization. It's a reminder of what's still possible. That capacity for deep, focused thought, it hasn't been destroyed. It's just been buried under a mountain of noise. But it's still there.
The hardware in our brains is still there, you know? It's ready and waiting to do the slow, difficult, and incredibly rewarding work of thinking deeply. So I think the fundamental question for our time is this. Are we willing to build a world, to redesign our digital environment in a way that actually allows that capacity to flourish?